Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Broadway Jets YouTube channel. You'll know me from Twitter as NYJ Mike. I'm joined as always by the master of receipts, NYJ Matt. And Matt, the Jets, we've been begging them to do it. They made some moves today. They traded Elijah Moore. They signed Mecole Hardman. We're going to get into all the thick of it.
Yeah, we've been waiting for a move. It's been a bit quiet. And before we jump into it, I do want to thank everyone who has subscribed. We're almost at 600 right now. And
Cool.
even though we're a couple hours late and you have the great guys like O'Leary, Richie will get out these videos ASAP, we appreciate you joining and hearing our thoughts on the both moves. And starting with Elijah Moore, it's sad to see where we came 2 years ago to now. We always said Elijah Moore felt like the non-diva receiver. He was all about ball, and he was like that for the first 17 games of his career. And in the midst of a 3-game winning streak, obviously everyone knows, he requested a trade, had a little bit of beef with LaFleur, and at the end of the day was moved for a second-round pick, and the Jets give up a third-round pick as well. Mike, when the notification pops up, what was your initial thought?
The notification popped up. I'm thinking, this is what he wanted. You know, the Jets had their first 3-game win streak in 7 years since 2015. You win a game in rainy Lambeau Field, 27-10 against the Packers. You're 3 games over 500. You're feeling good. And Elijah Moore is requesting a trade, and you're like, what is going on? It was a very bad look for Elijah Moore. He played out the season. It's tough. We're very optimistic Jet fans, and personally, Elijah Moore is one player that I did not appreciate or respect towards the end of his Jets tenure. So to see him go, I'm not sad about it, which is not common. It's most of the time we love these guys where, we follow them for years and we're excited about it, but he left a really sour taste, I think, in a lot of Jet fans' mouths. He didn't produce in year 2 like it looked like he was going to produce in year 1. The one thing that is disturbing to me is we had the same thing happen as Jet fans twice in 2 years, not the same type of extracurricular activities, which is Elijah Moore requesting a trade, but even though Denzel Mims kind of did is where I'm going with this, but Denzel Mims rookie year, you're like, whoa, second round pick, receiver, looks amazing. Super excited for the future, like put up a decent stat line, projecting all sorts of things. Year 2 doesn't work. You're like, man. Elijah Moore, rookie year, very similar, decent stat line, some big plays, very exciting, super excited for the future. Doesn't pan out. It's tough. It hurts. It's back to back. It sucks. It's a frustrating thing.
It's tough. I would be more upset if I felt a team like the Giants, where we didn't really have a plan to address receiver, and the Giants then have to, they use the one on Tony, then Galladay doesn't work out. The Jets will be okay at receiver, but here's the most important factor.
Yeah, because Garrett Wilson is a stud.
Right. And I'm not trying to grade this trade. I'm not asking to grade the trade like 2 years from now, because that's not fun. But I would ask to grade this trade once the draft happens. Because as it stands today, if they do cut Corey Davis or he's involved in the Green Bay trade, which is very, very likely.
It's very improbable that Corey Davis is the Jet in 2023.
Right. The Jets receivers going into the year would be Garrett Wilson, Mecole Hardman, Allen Lazard, Denzel Mims. That is not better than what the Jets had last year. So that's why I think it's very common knowledge that they're going to add another piece here. OBJ is the name that keeps getting floated around.
Yep.
DeAndre Hopkins supposedly won't even go for a 2. It would be less than a 2. But then you take a step back and you say, okay, the Jets moved up, 20, 30 picks, whatever it might be. Now they have 42 and 43.
It was 74-42 is the exact, or 40. Yeah, 42 is the number. Yep.
Right. And now that they're there, some people have said, oh, both could be used in the Aaron Rodgers trade, which I don't think that would be the case. I'm still pretty firm that they're going to give up a 2 this year and a big conditional pick next year.
Right.
If they do trade both 2s, the Jets wouldn't pick from 13 to like 112. You'd have a huge gap in rounds 2 and 3, which I don't think they would go that route. I want to make one more point on Elijah Moore. I am not going to wish him Like there's Jamal Adams, I wanted the worst for when he went to Seattle.
Yeah.
And that's more because I felt like he quit, but it was on a team was up and coming. It just felt like he was our star. But to be fair, Elijah Moore is like the 9th best player, 12th best player. He's not a top 3 guy that Jamal Adams was in the team. So I'm going to say, you know what? Go to Cleveland, do your thing. I didn't love how the year ended out, but at the end of the day, do you want him on this roster when the Jets host the Lombardi Trophy in 3 years, 2 years,
No.
1 year? Let him be
It's
in
gross.
Cleveland.
It's gross. It's gross. You just can't do it. It's just the definition of being selfish. And it was one of those things where the whole Jet fan base came together and they're like, "What are you doing? Why are you requesting a trade now?" It's unbelievable. If Elijah,
Yeah.
I do think at the time, maybe after the fact, there were some people who said, Elijah Moore had some good games. They're like, oh, maybe LaFleur was wrong. Maybe Elijah Moore was right.
Zach Wilson
Yada yada.
sucked, which is true, right? There's been a little bit of revisionist history. And
Sure.
all I'll say to that, though, is it doesn't change what he did during that time. And then he didn't produce when you look at the final 10
Yeah.
games of that year. He just didn't get the job done. He was on the field. He had a chance to get targets, make plays, and he scores against Chicago. And we're all thinking, oh, maybe this is a turnaround for him. And then nothing happened again. So
Yeah. And it was one of those things where it was like, we're rooting for him and it just didn't feel right, and it was also, there were those clips from his rookie year where you're like, whoa, Nanny's tweeting out a clip, the all 22, Elijah Moore's wide open down the field. Here are these clips. And you're like hoping better quarterback play will result in more of that. There was not better quarterback play in 2022, but we didn't see those clips. It wasn't like Elijah Moore was wide open all the time. And the interesting thing is to me about this trade is Elijah Moore was not valued that highly around the league, where you're essentially using him in a pick swap. I would have thought maybe he has more value than that, honestly. And Joe Douglas has been a good negotiator, so it's not like Joe Douglas consistently gets less value than you'd want from these trades. He gets more value than you'd want. And in this trade, if that is fair and true, Joe Douglas's negotiating ability, Elijah Moore is worth 30 rounds in the second to third round, in third to second round. It's 30 picks. Excuse me. It's I thought he was worth more.
And that's why it will be okay, given that the Jets use that pick for Rodgers and still retain a 2 and make the roster better. You get a center, and then you can sign OBJ. And I think at the end of the day, you can look at it as a net positive. But
dude, if the Jets keep the 1 and 2 and trade one of these 2-2s for Rodgers and a conditional pick next year, oh my God.
I think that's what
so much. I think so too.
I think that's what they're going to do, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And that's when we can look back at the trade and be like, oh, maybe we didn't think we'd get the value, but it is a win trade. If they don't do that, then this trade can be looked back on. Given Elijah Moore has a 900-yard year in Cleveland, plays his ass off, you don't want to give up guys that you're paying $1 million and that are 22 years old, right? So that trade happens. Before we move over to Mecole, any last thoughts around Elijah Moore?
I just can't get over the fact of what he did. I cannot believe it. I can't believe it. It's just one of those things where to get that disgruntled in this good of a situation with a locker room that clearly has a bunch of leaders, where you had Robert Saleh come in and he did change the culture. To request that trade was so unbelievable. It just didn't make a lot of sense. It was almost like when Kyrie Irving randomly requested the trade from the Nets.
Mm-hmm.
The Nets they were like 37 and 25, and Kyrie's playing well and KD's playing well, and he just comes out and requests a trade. And you're like, what the fuck? It was unbelievable.
I'm going to say something dumb right now, but if you let me get to that end spot, it might be smart. That was game 17 for Elijah Moore. He missed 4 games at the end of 2021. Garrett Wilson in the Detroit game is about 16, 17 games into his pro career. There were clips of Garrett Wilson showing up or being frustrated about not getting the ball thrown at his feet. The difference is Garrett Wilson understands that he's under contract and he wants to be a part of this team. He's not going to request a trade after 17 games. Now, if Elijah Moore were to throw his hands up, get frustrated, we would say, okay, maybe don't show up your young quarterback, but maybe fucking do it so that coaches will change it. Like there's an element we would come back and be like, okay, you can be mad. To request a trade, to leave practice, get thrown out basically, curse off your coach, that's just not the way to go about it. And I wish it didn't happen that way. I wish it could have happened much differently, because if they did move Elijah Moore and that wasn't the whole outburst, maybe that value is a lot higher, right? Maybe
Yeah.
you get a better pick for him. So,
Or maybe he'd be on the Jets.
or
You
maybe
know,
he'd be a
there was
goddamn
that
Jet.
stretch last year where he's averaging 90 yards a game and he's electric and he has a touching as the Dolphins and he's a 100-yard game here and a 90-yard game there. And it's very frustrating and it sucks because we are ultimately Jet fans. We want the Jets to do well.
AJ Brown's an asshole too. AJ Brown is like a true asshole.
AJ Brown
Brown's
is a scumbag
yeah.
who put weird thoughts into Elijah Moore's head. Of course, those two are teammates at Ole Miss. And, you know, AJ Brown says some weird shit and he forced his way out of Tennessee, which is also a pretty good situation. And then he goes to a really good situation in Philadelphia, and maybe Elijah Moore's like, oh my God, maybe I should do that. And I don't know.
No, but that was my point with the Garrett Wilson thing too. Like I think the part of Elijah Moore is like, if I want to get paid what I'm earned, I need to produce to get that money, and I can't do it here.
Yes, it's about the money. It's all about the money, and it's just selfish. And because he did have the opportunity, that is what's frustrating. He did. So it was like he gaslit himself into thinking that he didn't have the opportunity, when it's not like the Jets were the first passing offense in the league last year. Like, we need him, and he didn't do anything after all this nonsense. And he had chances. There was the one game, week 9, when the Jets played, I think it was the Bills. I tweeted out the clip today where the Jets just made him run like 1,000 end arounds behind the line of scrimmage and didn't ever give him the ball, which is hilarious, right after he requested the trade. But after that, he's involved in the offense. You know,
well,
think about the Lions
to Denver game. The game of, like, he didn't travel to Denver. That was a huge storyline too,
because he's an asshole.
You're a part of the 53-man roster. You have to go. Like, the coach told not to travel. But hey, we can turn to Mecole Hardman, who is photoshopped behind me, which took me
ridiculous.
It took me about 30 seconds to make the Photoshop, and I'll lie on Twitter and I'll say it took me 2 hours, and then I'm a graphic design major.
This is
Mecole Hardman feels like an upgrade over Braxton Berrios in terms of being a returner, a specialist, being a take the top off the defense. Who knows what he can do in terms of if someone were to go down and he's like the true stand-in guy. Imagine this guy having Mahomes to Rodgers. That's his quarterback tandem that he goes from.
It's like Pete Davidson dating women. Sick.
Good reference. Good analogy.
I mean, look, Mecole is a capable receiver. He's had as many as 690 yards in a season. He was basically averaging that last year before he got hurt. When I saw the news, I wasn't thrilled because it's a little bit complicated. Mecole Hardman is not a terrific receiver in his own right. From his track record, maybe he'll be great and we'll love him, blah, blah, blah. You're going to pay the guy up to $6.5 million. He's going to be the Berrios kind of guy. But the reason the Jets cut Berrios, we thought, was because you need to upgrade receiver. You're not worried too much about the return game. But you do go out and get Mecole Hardman. And the thing that has bothered me about Joe Douglas' free agency to this point has been that I think Joe Douglas tries to acquire too many of these kind of players who are explosive, athletic, have a lot of promise, young guys, and they'll pay them about $5 to $7 million. And it really worked out with DJ Reed, and it hasn't really worked out with anybody else. In my opinion, instead of getting a guy like Mecole Hardman and then trying to sign an Odell Beckham for $7, $8, $9, $10 million, I'd rather go out and get DeAndre Hopkins and have a legitimate number one guy who is a crazy, real number one receiver in the NFL. They didn't do that. They went out and got Mecole Hardman. Are you excited about the move?
I like the move as a wide receiver 4.
He's got to be the wide receiver 4, first of all.
Right.
He's not the wide receiver 3.
Right. Here's the thing about the Hopkins, and I'm trying to envision the egos and the youth in this team, and you have an Aaron Rodgers veteran. You have Garrett Wilson, who thinks he's going to be a superstar next year.
Yes.
And then you have a guy like Lazard who has that built-in chemistry. Then you have a guy like Mecole Hardman that has the upside.
Yep.
And if you add an OBJ, and given that's a 1 to 2 year deal, I think he wants a multi-year deal. Hardman's only 1 year. you're thinking, okay, that balance kind of works. But if you were to bring in a true DeAndre Hopkins, you have to then give up capital, his contract. But I get what you're saying. I would rather Hopkins over Hardman plus OBJ. I just don't know in the locker room and the touches and everything. Does Joe Douglas want to go out, trade even more capital to get an older veteran like DeAndre Hopkins?
Yes.
That's that balance where
If I'm going to complain about Joe Douglas not splurging and signing a couple mid-level guys instead of one top tier guy, this might not be the best example because I
it's
agree with
fair.
you. I agree with you. I think Odell Beckham is a really good fit at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Elijah Moore's gone. Corey Davis, by all accounts, is going to be gone, whether it's in the Rodgers trade or just cut. I agree with you. I think that you can make an argument that Garrett Wilson with Odell is your number 2. Lazard's your 3, great blocker, terrific locker room guy. And you have Mecole as your 4, and Mims as your 5. It's a really good, really deep wide receiver core.
I think your point stands true, though, if you look at safety and you look at Fant in the tackle position,
right,
those bargain shopping moments are the starters. If you have Garrett Wilson, who you know is a stud and he will be a stud, and you bring in OBJ, then you could look at Lazard and Hardman as they have upside. If they are average or meh, they're the third, fourth guy, and we can live with that. If one of them pops and already has built in chemistry with a guy, it's a win for everyone.
Yeah, my team building philosophy would be, why not force the other team to have no choice, to not even know what to do? Who are you going to guard? You're going to guard Garrett Wilson, or you're going to guard DeAndre Hopkins? What are you going to do? Oh, by the way, we have Breece Hall in the backfield. We have 3 first-round picks in the offensive line. We have a couple of tight ends we're paying $25 million. Good luck. Take your pick. Again, I understand why the Jets did it. I'm not mad about the Hardman move. And you could run those jet sweeps with him. You could, of course, use him in the return game. You can do a lot of things with him. He's been a decent polished receiver. He has okay stats, and he's played with an elite quarterback before in this kind of role. But man, if you're going to spend $16 million on wide receivers, I'd rather spend $19 million and have DeAndre Hopkins.
That's fair. But I do think the short-term approach with Hardman and OBJ, where in 2 years from now, they give you everything that they have and they're not on the team anymore, that would be okay. I don't want to go back too far, but the Moore trade, I think, is standing out more to me, where Rodgers leads this offense with a healthy Breece Hall. Breece Hall is getting 200 rushes. Then you have Garrett Wilson, who is going to be a superstar. He's already there. You have Allen Lazard, built-in chemistry. Don't forget you have 2 tight ends. Would it shock you if Elijah Moore's stat line at the end of the year is like 45 catches for 580 yards? And it's a nice year, but then you're gonna have to. Are we gonna pay him? Are we gonna keep him? What are we gonna do?
Is he gonna request a trade after we got to 7-0?
Exactly. So that's where I'm thinking.
He's a malcontent character guy just based on that one instance. I think he showed his true colors, because when you're in a good situation and you make it into a bad situation, that's on you. It's frustrating.
I agree to a point. It was cool seeing the clips come out a week and a half after of him dapping up LaFleur, patting him on the back. And I wish he had the opportunity. I don't know if he talked to the media too much after it. I feel like they probably kept him away from it. But I would have loved the question of, hey, it's a business. I get it. I was frustrated. We're a Jet team that's going to win a lot of games. I want to be here. Like, that could pivot and make me feel a lot better about it.
We like to hear his side. He also said some kind of double down a little bit later on, but
yeah.
The funny thing was, you texted me today where we were like, dude, did you see the news? Obviously, so we're both working, and I did see the original tweet, but then you called me because you're a good friend, and you're like, did you see the tweet, which was in reference to Tom Pelissero tweeting,
right,
hey, the Jets traded Elijah Moore. And I was like, yeah, I saw the tweet, but I was like, oh my God, wait, what tweet? Did Elijah Moore tweet like, fuck the Jets? I thought that's what you meant. And I wouldn't be shocked if something comes out where he's like talk shit just based on his track record with the Jets, but hasn't been the case yet.
Yes. And
to his credit, by the way.
Right. And the punchline to the point is if you only move 1 second, do you get that second back? Yeah, you lose the third, but instead of having Elijah Moore, you build at a position of need now, which isn't receiver is not a need. Even if they get a veteran like OBJ or even a lower level, we're not thrilled about it. You still have studs at the position. Garrett Wilson is a stud. So that pick now, 42, 43, whatever we don't give up for Rodgers, I don't think it'll be both. You can then address safety, center,
yeah.
Offensive line at 13, all the way through. As you're building these crazy weapons, you cannot have a broken down offensive line and kill Rodgers. You have to invest in O-line at 13. Get a Paris Johnson, get a Peter Skronsky, play them at guard, tackle, whatever they can do to add value to this team. You have to bring them in.
Yeah, look, at this point, assuming what you said, the Jets trade one of the number twos. If you go tackle at 13 and Dwayne Brown becomes a very high-paid backup, which is fine, or if they want to cut him or whatever, and then you take a center in the second round and you sign OBJ, holy shit, that's a ridiculous offense. It's a ridiculous team. It's a really good spot. It's a really good spot.
And like why, and we'll wrap it soon, but why it's amazing is that it's a perfect balance of young blue chip talent, AVT, Becton if healthy, Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, mixed with Pro Bowl to all pro veterans. And then they're not at like tackle or quarterback. You're going to then be able to move forward and say, okay, where can I get a spot starter guard in free agency? Given AVT, like everything becomes so much easier if you bring in OBJ and 2 offensive linemen in the draft, and you don't have to start foundation. Both. It is a perfect path, and the defense is so goddamn good. Get a big interior defensive lineman, like Calais Campbell, and then just be fine.
So fine, and the Jets are clearly willing to do so. They tried to sign Fletcher Cox. They're not scared of the age. They're not scared of the pedigree. Calais Campbell seems like a really obvious fit. But man, this is what a talented group of guys. And I would invest in the O-line. And at this point, to be clear, I made my Hopkins comments. I think now it makes a lot more sense to go sign Odell Beckham, because you're not going to pay Mecole Hardman $6.5 million, pay Allen Lazard 10, 11 million. Garrett Wilson's making his 10th overall pick salary. And then you're going to go get DeAndre Hopkins and give him a pick? Probably not. So I'm very happy to get Odell now. I think it's a good fit. I'm happy with that. Get some pedigree, get some star power. Very exciting.
Very exciting. A good day. And I think that Rodgers news will break before the draft. And if the Packers really want to dig themselves in, it'll go then. But a move like today makes me think that something could be on the horizon, which would be a really great end of week to have Rodgers solidified a Jet. Then everything becomes cap related. You know where everything is. I do think that I feel like the Packers and Jets have an agreement on the compensation. I feel like the contract is the biggest holdup right now of who's eating what cost. Because you've been talking for so long now. You need to know if you're going to get a deal done. I don't think the 49ers signed Austin Bryant.
It got to be some kind of framework.
Yeah.
What just happened?
The 49ers signed Austin Bryant. But I got like 3 notifications, and I thought Rodgers got traded. Also, Matt was great on the show yesterday. I thought that was an awesome.
Matt Schneidman, oh my God, what a terrific.
Good dude.
We were introduced to Matt from a friend, and by chance, and turns out he's a beat writer for the Packers on The Athletic, and what a terrific guy. Great mustache.
Did you see Peter Kukowski reply to a tweet about the autocorrect?
Dude, the funniest thing ever, he's like, it was Paul Riley, who we love, our lawyer on Twitter. Yeah.
I can't believe it. He said, ironic, you blocked a guy for a simple autocorrect mistake. And I called him Kukowski like 11 times and kept making like the autocorrect joke. And I thought this guy, if he has a job, which he does, he'd be self-aware enough and understand it. He goes, the autocorrect lie is so dumb. Just stand by being a douche. If his phone autocorrected to that, it means he typed it before.
Oh yes, you're lying. You're not making a satirical joke.
Like he thinks my phone is autocorrecting. And he's like, oh, I caught him. He's had to have typed that before.
No, then the other thing that was great was that he said that you were being what the fuck? He said you were being sensitive or whatever. Well, meanwhile, he's blocking everybody.
He's called Jet fans sensitive.
Yeah.
And then it's like, hey, dude, you've blocked 500 Jet fans in the past 48 hours. And he's like, yeah, fuck that. Like, dude, like, what are we doing?
We should make a montage of his face with like all 500 Jet fans that he blocked. You know, you've seen like those big art murals where it's like these little pictures that go into this.
It becomes
Becomes
his
a good.
dumb profile picture, his dumb beard. Nah, it'll be fun.
No,
I have so many tweets, Mike. If the Jets end up trading like a second round pick for Rodgers, like these guys are gonna get buried.
you are the master of receipts. You have to live up to your name.
I love it. Hey, I think that was a good 30-minute video. So, Mike, any parting words for the crew?
Look, I wouldn't miss Elijah Moore too much. He wasn't a team player. This is a new organization that the Jets have, a new culture, and they've done a really good job cultivating it where the guys buy in and they have each other's backs and they're playing for a singular purpose. And when you have a guy come out and play for a different purpose, which is to make more money, and everyone's playing for money and it's a business, but it's not a bad thing that he's gone. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the Jets do at receiver to replace Elijah Moore.
Can't wait. All right, Mike, I'll talk to you soon, buddy. We'll be back. Thanks again for listening and talk soon.
Jet out.